The morning light slipped through the tall glass windows of Orion Tech Industries, painting long lines on the silver floor. Inside the interview hall, everything looked perfect. Neat chairs, shining tables, screens blinking with soft blue lights. Evan Carter, a middle-aged human manager, checked his wrist tablet one more time. He had been told to interview an alien worker from a poor colony, someone with experience in repair work, someone older, someone responsible. He straightened his jacket and looked toward the door. The chair across from him was empty. The air felt still, too quiet. The job was simple, factory maintenance, nothing special. But these days, getting reliable workers from other species was hard. They came from damaged worlds, tired, desperate, hoping to feed their families. Evan didn't expect much. He had already planned to finish early and grab lunch. Then the door opened. At first, he thought it was a mistake. A tiny figure stepped inside, barely reaching the height of the table. She wore a faded gray cloak torn at the edge. Her eyes glowed faint blue under the hood, nervous but brave. She clutched a small data pad and said softly through a cheap translator, "Good morning, sir. Mom's ill, so I came instead." Evan blinked. He thought he misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" The little girl took another careful step inside. "Mom's ill. She said I should come." Her voice trembled, but she didn't stop. She reached up and placed the data pad on the desk. It was shaking in her tiny hands. Behind the glass wall, two assistants exchanged confused looks. One of them whispered, "Is this a joke?" Another smirked, trying not to laugh. But Evan raised his hand, silencing them. Something about the child's calm tone, her clear eyes, made him pause. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lyra," she said. "Lyra of Thesa 9. He opened the file on his screen. The application said Lyra Vaughn, 37 cycles, repair engineer, single mother. Not a child. Not this small creature standing before him. "Where's your mother now?" Evan asked. Lyra's shoulders fell a little. "She's sick. Can't breathe the air here. She tried to come, but she fainted. I told her I'll try for her. She taught me everything." Evan's heart squeezed a little, though he tried to hide it. "This interview is for adults, Lyra. You're very young." She nodded quickly. "I can work. I help with machines at home. I fix things." Her small hand opened, showing burn marks across her fingers. "I can learn fast." "Please, sir. We need credits for medicine." The room went silent. The hum of the lights seemed louder now. Evan leaned back in his chair, unsure what to say. Company rules were clear: no minors, no unverified aliens. But this child, she didn't look like someone playing games. Her eyes held the same tired fire he had seen in veterans and workers who had nothing left to lose. He tried to soften his voice. "Your mother should rest. We'll see what we can do. Maybe I can talk to the—" "I can show you," Lyra interrupted, her translator buzzing. "I can fix things." Before Evan could stop her, she climbed onto the chair, too big for her, and pulled a small mechanical bird from her cloak. Its wings were broken, wires sticking out. This was Mom's gift. "It doesn't fly anymore. I can make it work again." Evan stared as her small fingers moved quickly, twisting wires, adjusting gears, her motions precise and confident. The little machine blinked, wings fluttering weakly. Then it lifted an inch into the air before falling back down. Lyra smiled shyly. "It just needs a better power cell. But I can do more if I have tools." The assistants outside stopped whispering. One of them whispered, "She's actually good." Evan felt a strange pull in his chest. This wasn't just pity, it was respect. He saw determination that didn't belong to a child. "Lyra," he said quietly, "why did your mother tell you to come here?" Lyra looked up at him, her voice small but steady. "Because she said humans care." Evan froze. The words hit harder than he expected. For a moment, the bright office, the rules, the screens, all of it faded. He saw only a brave little alien girl standing where no one believed she belonged. He looked at the empty chair next to her, the one meant for her mother, and sighed. "All right, Lyra," he said finally, voice calm but serious. "Let's see what you can really do." The child smiled, just a tiny curve of lips. Outside, the assistants exchanged shocked glances. The interview wasn't supposed to go like this. But Evan already knew. Something important had just begun, and the empty chair beside her no longer felt empty at all. Evan leaned forward, still unsure if what he was doing was smart or completely insane. A human manager interviewing a tiny alien child? If his supervisor found out, he'd probably be fired by sundown. But there was something in Lyra's eyes, something steady and unbroken, that made him ignore every logical thought. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the wall screens. Lyra sat on the large office chair, her small legs not even reaching the floor. Her hands rested neatly on the table, clutching her mother's name tag as if it were a shield. Evan cleared his throat. "All right, Lyra," he said slowly. "Let's start this properly. Tell me what you know about machine repair." Lyra straightened, her translator glowing faint green as it picked up her soft alien voice. "Mom taught me when I was little. She worked on mining machines back home. I helped her clean the parts, watch the power lines, and fix simple circuits." Evan raised an eyebrow. "Circuits? At your age?" She nodded quickly. "The machines were old and broke all the time. If we didn't fix them, we didn't eat." There was no fear in her tone, just quiet truth. Evan opened a schematic on his screen and turned it toward her. "Do you know what this is?" he asked. Lyra studied the design carefully. "Hydraulic manipulator," she said after a pause. "But your lines are too tight here. The pressure will leak if the joint isn't reinforced." She pointed to a section near the edge. Evan's mouth went dry. She was right. That exact flaw had caused 3 failures last month, and only 2 senior engineers had noticed. He leaned back slowly, trying not to show his surprise. "How do you know that?" he asked. Lyra shrugged a little. "Machines talk if you listen. They don't lie like people do." That line hit him harder than she knew. Evan smiled faintly, shaking his head. "You talk like someone twice your age." "Mom says work makes you older faster," Lyra replied, looking down at her hands. Outside the glass wall, the assistants who had been watching earlier now stood quietly. One whispered, "She's smarter than half the applicants we've had this week." The other frowned. "She's still a kid, though." "This isn't right." Evan ignored them. He tapped on his console and brought up a small box containing various machine parts. "All right, let's test that theory," he said. "Show me how you'd fix this." Lyra slid off the chair and walked to the table like she'd been doing this all her life. The parts were heavy for her small frame, but she didn't complain. She arranged them carefully, her glowing eyes narrowing with focus. Her thin fingers worked with surprising steadiness, aligning gears, sealing edges, connecting thin wires with an almost artistic precision. After several minutes, she stepped back. "Done," she said. Evan approached and picked up the small mechanical joint. It moved perfectly, smooth, tight, not a single leak. He checked the pressure on the screen. Exactly balanced. He looked down at her, half amazed, half speechless. "You realize some of our engineers couldn't do this on their first try?" Lyra blinked. Then maybe they didn't listen close enough. For a moment he laughed. Really laughed, something he hadn't done in weeks. It wasn't mockery. It was admiration. "You're something else, kid." Lyra tilted her head. "Is that good?" "Yes," he said softly. "It's very good." The intercom suddenly buzzed. "Mr. Carter," came a sharp voice from the ceiling speaker. It was his supervisor, Ms. Harrow. "Are you done with the THESA applicant yet?" "We're behind schedule," Evan hesitated. Working on it, ma'am." "Well, hurry up, and please tell whoever she is not to bring children next time." The line clicked off. Lyra's smile faded. She whispered, "I can leave if I made trouble." Evan shook his head. "You didn't, not even close." He crouched down a little so their eyes met. "Lyra, does your mother know you're here?" "Yes," she said softly. "She said humans have hearts. She said they see more than rules." Those words twisted something inside him. He looked at the broken chair beside his desk, the one no one ever used. Now somehow it didn't seem so empty anymore. He sighed and turned off the recording feed so the upper office couldn't see them. "All right," he said, standing up. "If you were an applicant, I'd say you just passed the first test." Lyra's eyes widened. "Really? You mean I can work?" Evan smiled gently. "Let's call it training. A small test, nothing official. Just between us." Her whole face lit up like a sunrise. "I'll work hard." "I promise. Mom says hard work makes humans smile." He laughed again. "Then I guess she's right." But deep down, he knew this was dangerous. If the upper board found out he was letting a child alien do tests, his career would be over. Still, he couldn't stop now. Something told him this meeting was no accident. As Lyra picked up the next tool, humming quietly in her alien tongue, Evan watched her hands move. Graceful, precise, hopeful. He didn't know yet, but the decision he made that day would change both their lives and maybe the whole galaxy's forever. The next morning, the factory floor buzzed with the sound of heavy machines, sparks flying from welders, and the deep hum of engines being tested. Evan stood near the repair bay, trying to look casual but feeling the nervous twist in his stomach. He had done something risky. He had asked Lyra to come again. Not officially, of course. No records, no logs. Just a training test, as he called it. When she walked in, she was wearing a small safety jacket that looked far too big for her. It dragged slightly behind her, but she didn't seem to care. Her glowing eyes darted around the room, full of curiosity and determination. Every mechanic and technician stopped what they were doing to stare. Some laughed softly. Others frowned. "Is that a child?" One worker whispered. "Carter's lost his mind," another muttered. Evan ignored them and waved her over. "Morning, Lyra," he said, pretending this was normal. "You ready?" She nodded eagerly. "Yes, sir. I brought my tools." She held up a small metal box with hand-sized instruments, clearly handmade and slightly bent from use. Evan smiled faintly. "All right then. Let's see what you've got." He led her to a workbench where a half-dismantled robotic arm lay. It was one of the company's prototype models, a precision manipulator for the Starship docks. The machine had been giving errors for weeks, and even senior engineers had struggled to find the problem. "This is from the Delta line," Evan explained. "It's been overheating. Nobody can figure out why." "Think you can find it?" Lyra didn't answer right away. She placed her small hands on the metal and closed her eyes. Everyone watching exchanged confused looks. "What's she doing?" Someone whispered. "Praying to the machine?" Another joked, but Lyra wasn't praying. Her species from Thesa 9 had a natural connection to energy, tiny sensory nodes in their fingertips that could detect heat, pressure, and current flow. When she opened her eyes again, she looked straight at the control board. "It's not the wires," she said softly. "It's the coolant valve. The angle is wrong. The energy gets stuck," Evan frowned. "The angle?" She nodded. "Here." She reached into her toolbox, pulled out a thin rod, and tapped the area near the joint. "It needs to breathe," one of the engineers scoffed. "We've tested that valve 20 times. She's guessing. Lyra didn't look offended. She simply picked up a spanner, climbed onto the stool, and started turning bolts. Her hands moved fast, focused, confident. Evan watched closely as she adjusted the joint by only a few degrees, then reconnected the valve tube. The machine hummed softly, the vibration evening out. Evan blinked. "Wait, did you just—" Lyra stepped back, brushing her dusty fingers on her sleeve. "Try it now." Evan pressed the test button. The robotic arm moved smoothly. No jerks, no overheating alarm. The screen showed stable temperature and perfect current flow. The room went silent. One of the technicians stared at the display, muttering, "That's impossible." "She actually fixed it." Lyra smiled shyly, her eyes glowing brighter. "Mom always said machines get tired too. You just have to let them breathe." Evan felt something strange, half pride, half awe. He'd worked in this company for years, seen hundreds of applicants, but never anything like her. "Lyra," he said softly, "how did you know where to look?" She thought for a second. "Machines talk different to everyone. To me, they hum when they're happy." This one was screaming before. Everyone in the room stared at her as if she were speaking magic, and maybe, in a way, she was. One of the senior engineers whispered, "If she can do that at her age, imagine what she'll be when she grows up." But not everyone was impressed. Near the corner, a tall man in a gray coat, Mr. Grawl, the factory's safety officer, watched with sharp eyes. He didn't like what he was seeing. He tapped on his communicator quietly, sending a short message. "Unauthorized miner in restricted zone." Possible violation. Evan noticed him but pretended not to. He knew trouble was coming. Still, he couldn't stop smiling when Lyra turned to him, her small voice soft but full of hope. "Did I do good, Mr. Evan?" He crouched down to her level. "You did better than anyone here." Her face brightened instantly. "Then maybe I can earn medicine for Mom." Evan froze. He had no answer. The truth was, he couldn't promise anything, not yet. But the thought of sending her away felt wrong. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We'll figure something out, Lyra, I promise." Before she could reply, a sharp alarm buzzed through the factory. The sound echoed off the metal walls, red lights flashing. A voice came over the intercom, cold and robotic. "Security inspection in progress. All personnel report for verification." Lyra's eyes widened. Evan's stomach dropped. He knew exactly what this meant. The secret was out. He turned to her quickly. "Stay close to me no matter what happens," he whispered. She nodded, clutching her small toolbox. The hum of heavy footsteps grew louder from the hallway. Evan took a deep breath, already planning how to protect her. The test was over. The real challenge was about to begin. The red lights flashed across the metallic walls, their glow turning the workshop into a sea of warning. The sound of heavy boots echoed down the hallway. Everyone froze, pretending to focus on their work, but every eye was secretly watching the door. Security inspections were never random. They came when someone reported a violation. Evan's pulse quickened. He turned toward Lyra, who stood beside the table, clutching her small toolbox to her chest. Her glowing eyes flicked between the flashing lights and Evan's worried face. "Did I do something wrong?" she whispered through her translator. Evan shook his head quickly. "No, you didn't. You just weren't supposed to be here." The door slid open with a hiss, and Mr. Grawl, the tall, gray-coated safety officer, entered with 2 security drones hovering behind him. His cold, sharp eyes scanned the room like a hunting machine. "Inspection time," he said in a deep, flat tone. "Everyone stay where you are." He moved from one workstation to another, checking ID badges and scanning the benches. When he reached Evan's corner, his gaze landed immediately on the tiny alien girl. His lips curled. "And what do we have here?" Evan stepped in front of Lyra. "She's my trainee. She's observing under my supervision." Grawl raised a brow. "Your trainee?" He circled them slowly, smirking. "She doesn't even look old enough to reach the table. And from what I can see, she doesn't have a registered ID." Lyra's small hands trembled slightly. "Mom has it," she whispered. "She's sick. I came for her." Grawl gave a low laugh, humorless and cold. "So now we're letting children from alien slums play engineer in an industrial zone. Carter, are you trying to turn this factory into a daycare?" The nearby workers fell silent. Some looked away, afraid to speak. Others looked at Evan with pity. They knew what was coming. Evan kept his voice calm but firm. "She's here because her mother applied for this job. The woman's too sick to make it, and I decided to give the girl a short demonstration, nothing official." "Nothing official?" Grawl's tone sharpened. "You allowed an unregistered alien child to handle restricted equipment inside a classified division. That's not unofficial, that's grounds for dismissal and arrest." Lyra flinched at the word arrest. Her translator stuttered before catching her voice. "Please don't be angry. I just wanted to help. I can fix machines." "I can prove it," Grawl sneered. "Oh, I'm sure you can. Maybe you can fix the paperwork I'm about to file." He turned to the drones. "Scan and record." The drones floated closer, beams of red light sweeping over Lyra. She closed her eyes, her small body trembling. The low mechanical hum filled the air. Evan clenched his fists. He couldn't watch this. "Stop," he said suddenly. Grawl turned. "Excuse me?" "I said stop," Evan repeated, stepping forward. His heart pounded hard in his chest, but his voice was steady. "She hasn't hurt anyone. She's done more good here in a day than half your staff in a week. You want to talk about safety? That girl fixed the Delta manipulator you've been whining about for months." Grawl's smirk faded slightly. "What are you talking about?" Evan pointed to the robotic arm beside the bench. "Run your diagnostics. It's clean now." She did that with no tools but her own hands. The officer narrowed his eyes and tapped his wrist device. The nearby screen blinked with readings. Stable output, 0 overheating. Perfect balance. His jaw tightened. Evan didn't stop there. "You see, she's not just some child. She's an engineer's daughter, and she's better at this than anyone here. If you file a report, file it on me. I let her in. I take full responsibility." Grawl's tone turned cold again. "You think you're a hero, Carter? This isn't a charity. The company doesn't run on pity." Evan stared right back at him. "No, it runs on people who care enough to fix what others throw away." A tense silence filled the room. The drones hovered still, unsure of their next command. The other workers exchanged shocked glances. They had never seen anyone talk back to Grawl before. Lyra tugged at Evan's sleeve gently. "You'll get in trouble," she whispered. "Please don't, I can leave." Evan looked down at her, his voice soft but firm. "Not this time, kid. You deserve better." Grawl folded his arms. "You're making a mistake." Evan shook his head. "No, the mistake would be walking away." Grawl scowled, clearly angry that his authority had been challenged. Fine, he said through gritted teeth. If she stays under your name. But if anything happens, anything, you'll be the one out that door. He turned sharply and walked away, the drones following behind him. As the door closed, the factory exhaled as if everyone had been holding their breath. Lyra looked up at Evan with wide eyes. You protected me, she said softly. Evan smiled tiredly. Yeah, guess I did. Why? He chuckled faintly. Because your mom was right. Humans do care. For the first time that day, Lyra smiled too. It was small and uncertain but full of light. And though Evan didn't know it yet, that decision, the choice to protect her, would echo far beyond that factory, beyond that world, into the stars themselves. The next morning, the factory felt different. The air was thick with whispers, curiosity, and quiet disbelief. Everyone had heard the rumor, the human manager who had stood up to the safety officer for a little alien girl. Some thought Evan had lost his mind. Others thought he was brave, but everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Evan arrived early before sunrise. He walked through the metallic corridors, his boots echoing on the floor. He hadn't slept much. His mind kept replaying, the look on Lyra's face when he'd told Grawl, "File it on me." He had no regrets, but he knew the cost. One mistake today and he'd be gone. When he reached his section, he found her already there. Lyra sat on a stool, legs swinging, clutching a tiny lunchbox. She smiled shyly when she saw him. "Good morning, Mr. Evan." He blinked, surprised. "You beat me here?" She nodded proudly. "Couldn't sleep. I wanted to start early." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You sound like me 20 years ago." She tilted her head. "Then maybe we'll both fix a lot today." That made him laugh. "Maybe we will." He gave her a real assignment this time, a damaged stabilizer module from a hover unit. It wasn't too dangerous, but complex enough to test her skills. "All right, Lyra, this one's tricky," he said. "No help. You figure it out your way." Lyra's glowing eyes studied the part carefully. She didn't touch it right away. She listened, placing her hand gently on the surface, as if feeling its heartbeat. The factory's hum filled the air, but her focus never broke. Evan watched quietly, the same way a teacher watches a student take their first real test. Minutes passed. Workers began to gather nearby, pretending to check their own work, but really watching her. A few whispered bets formed in the corner. "No way she can fix that thing. She's just a kid. You didn't see her yesterday, she's scary good." Lyra finally opened her box of handmade tools. Her small fingers moved with confident grace, unscrewing, tightening, adjusting. She muttered to herself softly, alien words Evan couldn't understand. The translator blinked, unable to keep up. But he didn't need to know the language. He understood her rhythm. She worked with purpose, not panic. After 20 minutes, she stepped back. "Done," she said simply. Evan walked over, checking the module's readouts on his tablet. The pressure level stabilized, energy output balanced. The device hummed to life, smooth and even. "By the stars," he whispered. "You did it." Lyra looked up. "It's breathing again." That phrase again, breathing. It made him smile. "Yeah, it's alive." Before he could say more, a voice boomed from the far end of the bay. "Carter?" Evan turned. Ms. Harrow, his division head, marched toward them, her sharp heels clanging against the metal floor. Behind her were 3 executives, their suits spotless, their faces expressionless. Evan's stomach tightened. "Ma'am," he greeted carefully. She folded her arms. "We heard quite an interesting report. You're training an alien child now?" Lyra shrank back slightly, clutching her lunchbox. Evan stepped in front of her, steady but respectful. "She's learning, voluntarily. She's not on payroll and she's not a danger to anyone. In fact, she's been fixing the equipment faster than most adults." One of the executives frowned. "This is a company, not a playground, Mr. Carter. Do you have any idea what kind of violation this is?" Evan met their gaze firmly. Yes, sir, but I also know talent when I see it. That girl just repaired a stabilizer your last 3 contractors couldn't fix. The men exchanged looks. One of them muttered, "Impossible." "See for yourself," Evan said, gesturing toward the working module. The executive scanned it with his wrist device. His eyes widened slightly at the results. No errors, all stable. Harrow frowned, visibly annoyed that he might be right. "Even if that's true, Carter, you can't just—" Lyra's small voice interrupted. "Please don't be mad at him. I asked to come. Mom is sick. I just wanted to help." Her translator made her voice sound shaky, innocent. The executives fell silent. There was something about the way she said it. No manipulation, no rehearsed excuse, just truth. Pure and simple. One of them sighed. "How old are you, child?" Lyra blinked. "I think 8 human years, maybe 9. Another murmured, "Unbelievable." Evan stood tall, unflinching. "She's not just a child. She's the future of this kind of work. If humanity can teach others, and others can teach us, maybe we actually deserve the word united in United Colonies." The oldest executive studied Lyra for a long moment. "You're saying you'd stake your career on this girl?" Evan nodded once. Without hesitation, the silence that followed felt endless. Finally, the man turned to Harrow. "Give them 1 week. A trial period. No pay, no liability, just results." Harrow looked furious but nodded. "Understood." When they left, Lyra let out the breath she'd been holding. "They were scary," she whispered. Evan smiled. "Yeah, but you did great." Her little face brightened. "Then it's my trial day?" He nodded. "That's right. Your first official one." She grinned so wide her small fangs showed. "Then I'll make all the machines happy." Evan laughed softly. "I don't doubt it, kid." But as she turned back to her workbench, humming cheerfully, Evan noticed Mr. Grawl in the shadows of the hallway, watching them with cold, calculating eyes. The trial had begun, and so had the danger. The factory's usual rhythm had changed. Workers moved faster, spoke quieter, and everyone seemed to glance toward Section C where the alien girl worked. News had spread across the company like plasma fire, an 8-year-old alien child fixing high-tech machines with nothing but scrap tools. Some called her a miracle. Others whispered she was a danger. Evan tried to keep her safe. He made sure her name wasn't entered into the digital roster, erased her camera logs, and claimed every project she touched under his ID. But he knew they couldn't stay hidden forever. Someone, somewhere, was already watching. That morning, Lyra arrived early again. Her little feet echoed in the long hallway, her soft voice humming a tune that didn't belong to any human world. She greeted everyone cheerfully, even those who avoided her gaze. "Good morning," she said, clutching her toolbox. "Today I'll fix the coolant hub." Evan forced a smile, though his gut felt heavy. "Let's just take it slow today, okay? No big miracles." She tilted her head, puzzled. "Humans like miracles." He laughed quietly. "Yeah, but management doesn't." They got to work. The coolant hub was a tangled mess of pipes and sensors, one of the plant's most vital systems. If it failed, the whole production line would shut down. Lyra crouched beside it, running her small fingers along the metal. "It's tired," she said softly. "It's been working too hard without rest." Evan crouched beside her. "Machines don't rest, Lyra." She looked up with serious eyes. "That's why they break." Before he could reply, the door slid open. Mr. Grawl stepped in again, this time with 2 security drones hovering behind him and a digital pad in his hand. His face was unreadable, but his eyes were sharp as blades. "Morning, Carter," he said smoothly. "I hear your new assistant has been making waves." Evan stood up quickly. "She's under supervision. You've got no reason to be here." Grawl smirked. "Actually, I do. The board wants an internal audit. There's concern about unauthorized access to engineering systems." He turned his gaze to Lyra. "And I think I found the source." Lyra froze, clutching her toolbox tighter. "I didn't do anything wrong," she said through her translator. "I just fix things." "Sure you do," Grawl said mockingly. "But the system logs say otherwise." "The cooling units, the delta manipulators, someone's been modifying the settings. Someone without clearance." Evan stepped forward. "That was me. She's been helping me test configurations. The fault's mine." Grawl's smile widened. "A noble lie, Carter. But the data doesn't match your signature. It's coming from an unknown user, someone who somehow bypassed encryption." He pointed the pad toward Lyra. "Care to explain that, little one?" Lyra blinked, confused. "What's encryption?" "She doesn't even know what it means," Evan snapped. "You're interrogating a child, for God's sake." But Grawl wasn't listening. He tapped his wrist, and the drones projected a holographic map of the coolant system. A glowing blue thread ran through the network like a living vein. "These aren't machine commands," he said. "They're biological patterns." The entire workshop fell silent. Even the engines seemed to stop humming. Evan frowned. "What do you mean biological?" Grawl zoomed in on the data. "Energy signatures traced to her. She's not using tools. She's syncing with the machines directly." Evan turned to Lyra, stunned. "Is that true?" Lyra hesitated, eyes darting nervously. "I don't know. I just listen. They talk back. I don't mean to make trouble." The drones began to buzz louder, their scanners locking onto her. Red light washed over her small frame. "Unregistered energy output detected," the AI announced. "Foreign resonance pattern identified." "Enough," Evan shouted, stepping in front of her. "She's a kid, turn that off." Grawl's face hardened. "You don't get it, Carter. Whatever she's doing could be dangerous. If she can communicate with machines, she could override them. She's a risk to every system here." "She's not a risk," Evan growled. "She's a miracle." At that moment, the coolant hub behind them began to shake violently. Everyone turned as alarms blared and steam hissed out from the pipes. One of the valves burst, spraying glowing coolant across the floor. Workers screamed and ducked behind barriers. Evan grabbed Lyra's arm. "We have to get out." But Lyra pulled away, her small face suddenly calm. "It's just scared," she whispered. She placed both palms on the overheating pipe. "Lyra, no," Evan shouted. The air filled with light, soft blue at first, then brighter until it pulsed like a heartbeat. The coolant flow stabilized. The alarm shut off. Steam cleared. Lyra stood there, breathing hard, her hands glowing faintly before the light faded. The machines purred quietly, peaceful again. No one spoke for a long time. Grawl's face was pale. What did she just do?" Evan looked at her, awestruck. She fixed it with her energy. She didn't just understand machines. She connected to them. Lyra looked up shyly. "They were hurting. I helped." The entire workshop stared at the tiny girl who had just done what no engineer, no AI, no computer had ever done. And for the first time, even Grawl, the man who hated her, had no words, but deep down, Evan knew this miracle wouldn't be seen as a blessing for long. Because in a world ruled by rules and corporations, miracles were dangerous, and Lyra had just revealed the truth about herself. The day after the coolant incident, the factory didn't sound the same anymore. Machines ran quieter, smoother, almost like they were alive. The air felt charged with something new, something unexplainable. Workers who once laughed at the little alien girl now spoke in whispers when she walked by. Some were in awe. Some were afraid. All of them knew what she had done yesterday wasn't possible by any human or machine standard. Evan hadn't slept. He sat in his small office, staring at the message blinking on his tablet. "Board meeting, immediate, bring the child." His stomach twisted. He knew this wasn't going to be a simple meeting. It would decide both of their futures. When Lyra entered, she carried her tiny toolbox as always, her smile faint but brave. "Are we fixing something today, Mr. Evan?" she asked softly. He hesitated before replying. "Not machines this time, kid, people." Her glowing eyes blinked in confusion. "People are harder to fix," he smiled sadly. "You're right about that." They walked together down the long corridor toward the upper deck, a place workers rarely saw. Guards were stationed at every corner and drones floated silently overhead. When the giant doors of the boardroom opened, Lyra's small hand gripped Evan's sleeve tightly. Inside, the company's executives sat around a long crystal table, their faces cold and serious. At the head sat Director Arlen, a man known for his calm cruelty. Beside him was Ms. Harrow, the division head who had always disliked Evan's decisions. And near the back stood Mr. Grawl, his arms folded, watching like a hawk. Arlen's voice was smooth but heavy. "Mr. Carter, Miss Lyra, please take a seat." Evan sat down slowly. Lyra climbed onto the chair beside him, her feet dangling far above the floor. Arlen looked straight at her. "Yesterday you prevented a coolant explosion that could have cost millions in damages. Our sensors recorded your involvement." Lyra tilted her head. "I just helped the machines breathe again." The board members exchanged uneasy glances. Arlen continued. "Our engineers reviewed the data. You emitted energy that stabilized the system. No tool, no device, just you?" Lyra nodded simply. They were scared. Arlen leaned forward, studying her like a rare specimen. "You realize what that means, don't you? You are not just a worker. You are something new." Evan's hands tightened into fists. "She's a child. A talented one, yes, but not your experiment." Grawl's cold voice cut through the air. "With respect, Carter, this child may be worth more than every machine in this building combined." Arlen turned to Lyra. "Tell me, little one, can you do it again? Could you make other machines listen to you?" Lyra hesitated. "If they want to talk, yes. But some don't like me. Some are angry." That answer made the room go silent. Arlen smiled faintly, but it wasn't a kind smile. "Fascinating. With your gift, we could revolutionize engineering across the colonies. Entire fleets could self-heal. Systems could run without human interference. You could help millions." Evan immediately sensed the danger in those words. Help millions always meant serve the powerful. Lyra looked up innocently. "If it helps my mom, I'll do it." Evan's heart clenched. "Lyra," Arlen's eyes gleamed. "Yes, your mother. She's ill, isn't she? Our medical division could treat her. Full care, no cost. In exchange, we'll ask you to stay here and work with us. Not as a worker, but as a researcher. Think of it as a partnership." Evan stood abruptly. "That's not a partnership. That's a contract she can't understand. You're trying to own her." The guards shifted, but Arlen lifted a hand, calm as ever. "Mr. Carter, please. No one is forcing her." He turned back to Lyra, his voice soft and cunning. "You'd help your mother, wouldn't you?" Lyra's lip trembled. "Will she get better?" "Yes," Arlen said smoothly. "If you stay." Evan stepped in front of her. "Lyra, listen to me. You're not a machine to be used. You're free. You get to choose." Tears shimmered in her glowing eyes. "But if I go, Mom will still be sick." Evan knelt, his voice breaking. "Then we'll find another way. I promise. But this isn't right." For a moment, the entire room was silent except for the hum of the air filters. Then Lyra did something no one expected. She turned to Arlen and said softly, "Machines don't like lies." Arlen's smile faded. "What? You're lying," she said. "You don't want to help. You just want to learn how to control what you don't understand." The lights flickered. Every machine in the room buzzed faintly, responding to her heartbeat. The screens glowed blue, showing streams of alien code no one had seen before. Evan stared in awe. Lyra wasn't angry, but the machines were. They resonated with her emotion like a chorus of whispers. Arlen slammed his hand on the table. "Stop this now." Lyra blinked and the lights returned to normal. "I didn't mean to scare them," she whispered. "But they don't trust you." Evan took her hand gently. "Come on, kid. Let's go home." No one stopped them. Even Grawl didn't move. As they stepped out of the boardroom, Evan looked down at her. "You did the right thing," Lyra smiled faintly. "Humans care." Mom was right. Later that week, Evan used his connections to get medicine for her mother from an off-world clinic. The company never contacted him again, but rumors spread like wildfire. Across the colonies, people spoke of a human manager who defended an alien child that could speak to machines. Some called it a myth. Others called it the beginning of a new era, an era where compassion mattered more than profit. And somewhere, on a quiet planet under twin suns, a little alien girl fixed broken machines beside her recovering mother, humming softly as the engines around her whispered back. For the first time, The galaxy itself seemed to breathe easier.